Here comes Tony, walking in the room, mic in hand, something about to boom. Tell me what you gotta say. Tell me, make it count today. Big Tony speaks, and everybody listens. Big Tony speaks, his voice just keeps on lifting. When Tony talks, you know you gotta hear him. Big Tony speaks. Sit right down, let me hear your voice. Share your thoughts, Tony gives you choice. Tell me what you gotta say. Tell me, make it count today. You always speak, Big Tony speaks, and everybody listens. Big Tony speaks, his voice just keeps on lifting. When Tony talks, you know you gotta hear him. Big Tony speaks. Big Tony speaks. He's got something to say every single day. He's got something to say. Come on out and play. Big Tony speaks, and everybody listens. Big Tony speaks, his voice just keeps on lifting. When Tony talks, you know you gotta hear him. Big Tony speaks. Big Tony speaks. Big Tony. Big Tony speaks.
What's going on, everyone? Hope you're doing well this fine Monday. And hope it hasn't been a Monday for you. You know, almost everyone hates Mondays. I got an echo, got to fix. Okay, I think I fixed it. You know, everyone hates Mondays. You know, they're a lot of times the roughest day of the week because you're coming right off of that weekend, and you know, having to get back into the swing of things, as they say. You know, but I hope it hasn't been that bad for you. And if it has, hopefully you could maybe go back to sleep and wake up again and pretend it's Tuesday. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and go down below, hit that like button, that thumbs up. It's thumbs up on both platforms, Rumble and YouTube. And if you're not already following the channel or subscribed to the channel, you know, go ahead and hit that follow button on Rumble and subscribe on YouTube. And smash that notification bell. It's the same on both platforms. And that way you know when I come on. Welcome to Big Tony Speaks. I am Big Tony. And I'll be guiding you through this wild ride today. I have a number of kind of WTF stories today, but you know, our main story is about the Democrats wanting to clear the map, whatever that means. In fact, there's a couple of stories today that kind of surround the whole gay, transgender, that kind of thing. But you know, it's something in our world today that we have to kind of deal with. So let's go ahead and get into our first article up for today from the Gateway Pundit. We got this right here. U.S. intelligence suggests Iranian Supreme Leader Mustafa Khamenei That's the new one. The only one, from what I understand, the only one left of the Khomeini line. Um, but yeah, that Mustafa Khomeini, the new Iranian supreme leader, apparently he's gay, and Donald Trump reportedly burst into laughter when he was briefed by intelligence officials about this. I would too, dude. Man, I mean, Islam, and this guy is like, the head, you know, the head Islam, you know what I mean? And he's gay. Islam kills gay people. That's a capital offense in Islam, being just being gay, much less being transgender or any of that. You know, so let's get into this. And I just love the picture. This is him in front of a pride flag. In a stunning turn of events, it appears that Iran's new supreme leader, who was chosen by Iran's clerical establishment following the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is likely a homosexual. According to a report by the New York Post, this, along with an quote, impotency problem and inability to find a wife, drew concern about his leadership capability from the elder Khomeini before his assassination. I would think so. The Post reports that U.S. spy agencies believe Khomeini had a long term sexual relationship with his childhood tutor, according to a tip from, quote, one of the most protected sources that the Iranian government has. Um, Trump is said to have laughed out loud when briefed by officials. Um, Others in the room found it, quote, hilarious, according to the Post's source, and one senior intelligence official was laughing, quote, for days. Steve Nelson writes for the Post. The allegation of homosexuality was alluded to in a CBS News report on Sunday that said the elder Khomeini, who had ruled Iran since 1989, preferred a different successor in part because of unspecified, quote, issues in Motaba's, quote, personal life. Quote, his father and others suspected he was gay, and that was something that people were spreading to try to stop his ascension. One of the Post sources explained uh, homosexuality is illegal in Iran, well, in Islam, with sodomy carrying a death sentence. Meanwhile, it's not even clear if the younger Khomeini is still alive. President Trump and War Secretary Pete Hegseth have confirmed that Khomeini is likely seriously injured, with Hegseth stating last week that he is, quote, wounded and likely disfigured. This comes after the newly chosen leader excuse me, issued a lengthy written statement which was read out by Iranian state TV. Notably, he did not make a televised appearance, as reports suggest that he's in bad shape from U.S. strikes. Quote, he is understood to have lost at least one leg in the incident and is believed to have sustained severe internal injuries, possibly to his stomach or liver, GBN reports, noting that he may even be in a coma, according to sources. Some reports suggest that he doesn't even know he's the supreme leader of Iran because of his current physical state. Oh, Lord have mercy. But yeah, I kind of had a chuckle at this, and figured you might too as well. And it was also kind of a WTF. I'm like, what? The supreme leader uh, of Iran is possibly gay. I knew of the reports of all his injuries and whatnot, but I wanted to focus on this gay thing because, like I said, in Islam, that is not only frowned upon, it's a death sentence. So he might ought to just go ahead and pray for Allah to take him on. You know what I mean? 'Cause oh, Lord have mercy. I personally think it's hilarious. What do you all think? Up next, we have. Let me get all these ads out of the way before I make it visible. Okay, the Arizona maniac who crucified a beloved pastor begs for the death penalty. Quote: "The victims want it. The victims' families want it. I want it, and the taxpayers want it." Well, I mean, he's sentenced to death, you know, and if he wasn't, we would be having to pay for, you know, his food and his housing and etc., his medical, all that, for the rest of his life and whatever, and I say, if he's been sentenced to the death penalty, well, he hasn't been sentenced. He's begging for the sentence. Um, but if he qualifies for the death penalty, he should go ahead and be given the death penalty, and they should get it over with quick. None of this like sitting on death row for 10, 15, 20 years, you know, and then finally maybe killing him. Just go ahead and carry out the death penalty, as soon as possible. He's obviously not going to appeal because he's begging for the death penalty. He wants it. He wants to die. And this is the character here. Adam Schiff, the 51-year-old Arizona man who confessed to the brutal crucifixion. I can't speak today. Crucifixion style murder of 76-year-old pastor William Shoneman is now begging the court to give him the death penalty. Schiff, obsessed with the Old Testament and sporting a Hebrew tattoo meaning God on his neck, admitted to nailing the pastor's hands to the wall, placing a crown of thorns on his head, and mutilating his body in what he called Operation First Commandment, a deranged plot to target over a dozen Christian leaders across the country for allegedly leading followers astray. The gruesome crime took place in April of 2025 at Shoneman's home in New River, where the elderly pastor of New River Bible Chapel was found dead in his bed, arms outstretched, in a mock crucifixion covered in blood. Authorities say Sheaf broke into the home after stealing a truck from nearby Cave Creek, carried out the killing, and later confessed fully to the FBI and multiple media outlets even before his indictment. And here Colin Rugg has posted on X, man who crucified a pastor in Arizona and planned on doing the same to about a dozen others begs judge for the death penalty. 76-year-old Pastor Bill Shoneman was found in his bed with his arms stretched wide, pinned to the wall with a crown of thorns. And we have some video right here.
There's nothing worse than breaking the first commandment. I drove from there to Bill's house like 2 in the morning on a Sunday night, and I executed him. It's fast. I mean, it's, I didn't want it to be bloody. I didn't want it to be a painful. I'm not trying to torture the guy. I just wanted to execute him quickly. Put him in the cross position on the wall, and I screwed him to the wall. And then I had a crown of thorns I put on his head. So he's crucified against the wall with the image of Jesus.
I mean, it's an undisputable fact that the victim, Pastor Bill Schoenman, was over 70 years old. It's an undisputable fact that the crime was heinous in nature. I intended it to be heinous. So there are 2 aggravating factors, and I have no mitigating factors. That's why I'm saying, why do we have to drag this on and on and on? Why can't we just go to sentencing? I'm not contesting anything. Before I was even indicted, I gave a full confession to the FBI. I did 4 interviews with 4 separate media outlets. From day one, I've said I did this. These are the reasons why I did this. And I'm not contesting anything. And my speedy trial rights went from 5 months to basically 2.5 years. And we're dragging this out in the interest of justice. What about the victims' families? What about me? What about my family? We want closure so we can move on with our lives.
He fully admits it, and he wants it, so give it to him. Prosecutors charged him with first-degree murder, burglary, kidnapping, theft, and attempted murder counts related to his hit list. Representing himself in Maricopa County Superior Court last week, Sheaf tried to plead guilty on the spot, railing against delays in the legal system. Quote, from day one, I've said I did this. These are the reasons why I did this, and I'm not contesting anything, he told the judge. What about the victims' families? What about me? What about my family? We want closure so we can move on with our lives. Sheaf highlighted the crime's heinous nature, committed intentionally against a victim over 70, as aggravating factors warranting capital punishment. Yeah. Quote, put me on death row, set the execution date for right now. The victims want it. The victims' families want it. I want it, and the taxpayers want it, Sheaf declared. The Maricopa County Attorney's Office is seeking the death penalty. Well, they're seeking it. He wants it. Save the taxpayers' money. Go ahead and do it. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. What do you all think? I mean, he confessed to it multiple times, went on TV and confessed to it. He is asking for it, asking for the death penalty. Go ahead and give it to him. I mean, sometimes it is actually that simple. Anyway, let me know what you all think about this. I think, straight up, just like I said, he did it. He confessed to it. There's no reason why he should not get the death penalty, because it was heinous in nature, and it was against a person that well over 70 years old. You know, he did it intentionally. He gave his reasons for doing it. There's no questions, that still need to be answered. And he wants the death penalty. Let him have it. Save the taxpayers a whole bunch of money. Go ahead and, just, skip all the proceedings. I mean, no jury trial. Just do a bench trial. Have him sign papers that he wanted a bench trial. Just do a bench trial. All the bench trial has to consist of is basically, how do you plead? I find you guilty. And then we skip directly to sentencing and set the date for like the next day or however long it takes Arizona to prepare for uh, the death penalty, for prepare to actually kill someone. That's my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the chat. Okay, then we have this article here. Cuba didn't FAFO. The regime folded without any pressure. And we have right away some video.
Cover in Spanish. You're all right about
Oh, good. Saying it's 30 minutes.
We don't need an interpreter for this one. Quiero darle las gracias. I think I'm a good interpreter. You'll find out in a second. But las gracias a los países que están aquí hoy. Estos países, primero, el presidente ha hecho esta región una prioridad en su administración. Hay muchos presidentes que han dicho que lo van a hacer, pero él lo ha hecho y se lo agradecemos. Y muy agradecido a los 12 países que están aquí hoy. Estos son países que no solamente son aliados, son amigos. Son países que siempre responden cuando hay una necesidad y trabajan en conjunto con nosotros, y queda mucho por hacer. Estos son países que tienen una gran población, mucho potencial, y queremos ser sus socios en desarrollar sus países, sus economías y su seguridad. Y le doy las gracias de verdad por estar aquí en el día de hoy con nosotros.
Cuba has finally folded. After days upon days of Trump talking about it pretty bluntly, of potentially invading Cuba, especially after the operations in Venezuela, the operations taking place in Iran, and, Trump's rhetoric towards Greenland, Cuba finally realized that Trump doesn't bluff and actually took Trump's threat seriously. And they folded. They are now willing to negotiate with the United States. Ofer, I want to ask you, first off, why did Cuba fold? And how weak is Cuba to fold when there's literally no pressure for them to fold?
Oh,
Yeah, so
pressure.
the reason why Cuba folded is because they're in a massive crisis. So we talk about no pressure. And in one way, it is funny because there's no military pressure on Cuba right now. But economically speaking, they're being strangled by American sanctions. There's been a trade embargo imposed on Cuba. Trump put it in place when he was in his first term. Obama had lifted it beforehand, and then Biden he reversed the Trump embargo. But on day one of Trump getting into office, he reversed that decision. So it always slips between Democrats and Republicans. But right now there's a trade embargo on Cuba, and that's insane when you think about it, because it's literally like 90 kilometers away from the coast. So it would be a natural trading partner when it comes to food, even oil, even anything related to the fishing industry. So Cuba, one of their closest neighbors, is not even trading with them. And not only that, the United States has made it intentional in the way in which they've basically boxed Cuba out of having any normal relationships with any other country in the region. So beforehand, Cuba was getting all of its oil from Venezuela, and that was a lifeline because Venezuela was obviously aligned with a lot of the Eastern Bloc. They were a socialist country. They had a lot of sanctions imposed on them by the US themselves. So Venezuela was a major partner, and Cuba tried to reciprocate that by sending in some of their elite forces to guard Maduro. Clearly that didn't work, and those soldiers were unable to protect him because he was kidnapped without any American soldiers dying. And ever since, Cuba has lost a major trading partner and a lot of the leverage has been reduced. So Trump now, he has a direct option to essentially pressure Venezuela into stopping their trading relationship with Cuba. He can control the ebb and flow of it in the volume to his choosing. So he has a lot of leverage over Cuba. And same thing with Mexico. Mexico is another major trading partner, the only other one besides Venezuela, actually. And Donald Trump is also telling Claudia Steinbaum when to trade and when to not trade. And she's basically been cooperating with him. So they've been strangling Cuba from both prongs over here. And at the same time, there were already underlying economic issues. There's huge problems when it comes to rolling blackouts. A lot of times the internet gets cut off. There are issues with energy. So people's homes aren't heated or they're not cooled. They don't have an AC. People don't have cool hot water when they're showering. That would make anybody revolt, in my opinion. And it's another problem because they're beginning to ration food. They're beginning to ration natural resources. A lot of medicine is also being withheld from them. And it's even worse because all of the money, all of the importations, they're getting controlled by this state-owned clique. It's called Gaisa. It's controlled by the Castro family.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are profiting off of the working and the toil of the Cuban people. So all the circumstances point towards Cuba being very weak. And that's why another round of protests could actually undermine the regime. So that's why the president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, he's not even taking a risk. He's immediately folding. He's immediately trying to acquiesce to Trump's demands because he knows that his head can be on a platter.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I want to add on to one other point that you brought up, which is Venezuela. Look, Cuba basically relied on Venezuela as its number one trading partner and its number one partner globally. Without Venezuela, Cuba would fall. And that is very clear. That is basically what is going on now. Venezuela was not only the number one state sponsor for narco terrorism, but also the number one state sponsor of Cuba, which is also, terrorism there. And a lot of narco terrorism, drugs that goes through Cuba as well. And it's a dangerous place in general. It's not necessarily a westernized place as you would think it is. So it is very clear that after Trump practically ended all of the oil and all of the trading with Venezuela, or at least highly restricted it with Cuba. Then after that, Cuba began to fold. So there's a lot of other things that go into here. Look, as you mentioned, there's significant economic concerns in Cuba, extremely, extremely high prices of everything from literal, heating of houses to getting hot water. Everything is extremely expensive. The infrastructure of Cuba is suffering greatly. It is very, very old. It's like from the 1970s. It is everything in Cuba is really coming down and crashing. And look, Cuba in general is a huge place. It's important to mention that like the sheer length of Cuba when you compare it to any other Caribbean island is insane, which means that it is prime real estate for tourism. It's prime real estate for oil. It's a perfect location when you think about it, but still their economy is suffering so greatly. And eventually the people are going to realize this. The people are going to realize, why are our partners all around? Why is the Dominican Republic doing so well? Why is the Bahamas doing so well? But we are failing. And the truth is, it's because of the Cuban government. So having Cuba in general as a partner of the United States would be a massive win
Mr.
for the
Trump has
Trump
taught me
administration.
is
And again,
courage.
continue
We
his
never back
legacy of
down
being a
from a
president
fight,
that
even if they're
secures
much
the
bigger
Western
than you,
world
much
for
bigger
America,
than
whether
you.
it's
And I feel
Venezuela,
all the
whether
local
it's Cuba,
Kentuckians
whether
feel the
it's
same way. You
Greenland,
guys have
and
that
make
fight.
sure that,
You guys have that
adversaries
swag.
like
There's a lot of
China,
young
like
kids in
Russia,
here.
like
The future
previously
of
Venezuela,
America.
don't
I
have
grew up just a
control
few
in the
hours away
territory
from
of the
here. My
United
dad
States.
taught me to
Ofer,
fight.
why
And
is Trump,
all of
though,
our
why does he
voices
care about
matter in
Cuba?
America.
Cuba
And I'm
realistically
never
does not
afraid to
pose a
speak
threat to the
truth. And I
United
know you
States.
guys aren't.
It has nothing,
We are
like
here
by
representing the
itself,
United
by itself.
States.
So
And it's just a
why would Trump care so much to potentially overthrow the government of Cuba?
Yeah, on its own, it's not
Okay.
a threat. We're not in 1962 anymore, where the
Cuba is of value to the United States because of its strategic positioning. This is why China, Russia, other entities in the world are interested in Cuba. This is, mainly China and Russia have been, forever interested in Cuba, and they've had some pretty strong influences there over the decades. So it's because of its strategic positioning in respect to the United States. So that's why it's so important. Um, and with it having a communist dictatorship regime controlling it, it's open to uh, China, it's open to Russia, etc., and that could pose a danger to the mainland United States. So that's why it's so important. This is an America First issue because it directly affects homeland United States. What is going on, Patriot? Glad to see you in the chat. And yeah, Marilyn is watching from work in between her duties, and I hope you're doing well, Patriot. Oh, um, but what they just said, just in that little bit that I showed, I said that's a 30-minute long video. I said I wasn't going to play the whole thing. What they just said in that little bit that I did show pretty much encapsulates um, what's going on and why um, they're being choked to death. The government of Cuba, they're being choked to death by the sanctions and et cetera that are upon them. Yes, they've been getting some help from foreign entities such as Russia and China, but you know it's apparently not enough. And Russia and China, they are not about to fight the United States over Cuba. If they can gain influence, gain a foothold in Cuba, and use it strategically, then they will. But if America shows interest and starts negotiating, well, Russia and China, they're backing off because they don't want to start a world war, which is what would happen if they tried to put a military foothold in Cuba, then and then say United States, decided to preemptively defend itself from them, that would most assuredly create a situation of war, and that would develop into a world war yet once again. And they don't want to do that because the next actual bombs being dropped and missiles being shot, missiles being fired, etc. War, will or world war will be a globally mutually assured destruction situation. You know, the world that comes out on the other side will not look anything like the world before. So I just wanted to, um, bring this up that Cuba is folding. They are, asking to negotiate with America, and I know that the big thing that America is going to want is a regime change. Let the people decide who their leaders will be. I mean, of course, we'll have to get an interim leader in there until they can have a free and fair election to decide their own leader. You know, which is actually what's supposed to be going on in Venezuela. The person who is in the leadership right now is supposed to be only temporary. And they're supposed to be trying to make arrangements for a free and fair election to decide for the people to decide who their new leader will be. So we're we're gaining control of our hemisphere, and especially the Americas. You know, because this whole you have North America, Central America, South America. They are the Americas. This whole shooting match is America technically. Now we have America, the United States. You know, but the whole thing is actually the Americas. So we need to at least have that secure. You know, we the every single one of these countries, North America, Central America, South America, they all need to be working together, for the security and safety of our uh, Western Hemisphere region. And the only way we're gonna do that is as the 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 big brother on the block, you know, whipping these other countries into line, you know, um, getting them to play nicey nice. You know what I mean? We'll play nicey nice as long as they do, and we'll provide security for the region. Of course, they've got to help. They don't have the resources that we have. You know, so we're and Trump is as he said about security for countries overseas. We're no longer gonna be providing said security without those countries footing the bill, or at least part of it. You know, we're being for forever and ever we've been ripped off. We've been providing security for these other countries and not collecting a dime for it. The money has been coming out of the taxpayers' pocket. You know, so I mean, he's forming a coalition, and everything, you know, to secure our hemisphere, and you know these countries are going to be putting in, as well. If they don't have the finances, they do have the resources. Natural resources that they can share with the United States, and that's just as good as money, really. You know, because it supplies our manufacturing. Which more and more of the manufacturing is coming back to the United States. So we're going to need those resources. So while all of this may not on the surface look like it's America first, it is. Sometimes you got to give to get. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's necessary to help another country in order to gain some resources, or um, gain a little bit more financial leverage, or territorial leverage, to secure our region. That's That's the whole reason, or a large part of the reason that we want Greenland is mainly for security, but also for minerals. We want some of those mineral rights because they've got huge deposits of oil and various other minerals, and well, the United States could really use that. I mean, sure, we've got enough oil right here in the United States, but it's going to take time to get our energy sector, into full steam. And in the interim, we need the resources. So, all right, let's move on. Feel free to comment on any of the stories that I've presented so far. Um, at any time during the show. I mean, we will discuss. Um, so, um, next up, we have. I've already forgotten what order that I've put these in. I try to, I try to, set my articles up in specific orders. Each show. Okay, so we've got this one. All the ads are out of the way. Here we go. The best quote on Islam that you've never heard. Winston Churchill predicted Europe's fall to Islam all the way back in 1899. Yeah, bet you didn't know that Winston Churchill was psychic, huh? No, he ain't. He wasn't psychic. No, he just could read, the tea leaves, so to speak. Um, Former British Prime Minister Sir Winston Churchill recognized Islam's threat to Europe in 1899. Way back then, he could see it. If only he could see the continent today. He's probably rolling over so fast you could probably uh, uh, power London, with the energy coming off of him. But that year, Churchill published, quote, The River War, an historical account of the reconquest of the Sudan, telling the account of Field Marshal Lord Horatio Kitchener's conquest of that country. For context, this was a younger Churchill, not even 30 years old, and yet to rise to the political heights history would remember him for. I swear I've got to get a new chair. This one sucks. It literally hurts. Despite that fact, his observations regarding Islam are as timeless and politically astute as any by the British statesman. The quote was posted to social media platform X by Lebanese Canadian commenter Gad Saad, what a name, who took to mocking the left and current British Prime Minister Keir Starmer by using one of their favorite insults against Churchill. Godside says on X, Winston Churchill was an Islamophobe, Lady Keir Starmer. Churchill said the same thing 126 years ago. Pride Runs Deep posted that. Quote, individual Muslims may show splendid qualities, but the influence of the religion paralyzes the social development of those who follow it. No stronger retrograde force exists in the world. Far from being moribund, Mohammedanism that's a mouthful right there, is a militant and proselytizing faith. It has already spread throughout Central Africa, raising fearless warriors at every step. And were it not that Christianity is sheltered in the strong arms of science, the science against which it had vainly struggled, and it's cut off, I'm sure, down below. Yeah, here we go. The science against which it had vainly struggled, the civilization of modern Europe might fall as the civilization of ancient Rome, it continued. Before delving further, note the full quote. It would likely land Churchill in prison today. Quote, how dreadful are the curses which Mohammedanism lays on its votaries. Beside the fanatical frenzy, which is as dangerous in a man as hydrophobia in a dog, there is this fearful, fatalistic apathy. The effects are apparent in many countries. Improvident habits, slovenly systems of agriculture, sluggish methods of commerce, and insecurity of property exist wherever the followers of the prophet rule or live. A degraded sensualism deprives this life of its grace and refinement, the next of its dignity and sanctity. The fact that Mohammedan law, every woman must belong to some man as his absolute property, either as a child, a wife, or a concubine, must delay the final extinction of slavery until the faith of Islam has ceased to be a great power among men. The intellectual class champions a secular world without values endowed by the Creator. Thought leaders increasingly defend multiculturalism over a Christian code of ethics. The only moral grounding allowed to be espoused unapologetically in Europe is one of acceptance. And this is hardly a meaningful grounding for a just society. Europe now should remember Christ's words in Matthew 7:25 to 27. Quote, and the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. We are seeing this house on sand collapse without faith in him. That's right. Absolutely. 100%. You notice that the farther a country gets, from, their faith in God, the worse off that country tends to become, including the United States. We've seen, just, how far the United States, and in generalities, and not any specific person or any group of people, but we've seen how far this country, in generalities, as a whole, as a population, has fallen from faith in God. And then we see, what do we see? We see Dearborn, Michigan. We see New York City. We see California. Look at California. Oh my God. We see, Minneapolis, Minnesota. We see all these different states, all these different cities, that are falling left and right. you know, because their house is built on sand. It's not rooted in the rock of Jesus Christ. So this country was actually built on Christian values, and anyone who says different, needs to go back and do their due diligence and study the founding of this country and those who founded it. So, but yeah, I mean, even Churchill could see this whole mess with Islam, with the Muslims, um, coming way back in 1899. And yet our leaders, if they see it, they're ignoring it, and are doing very little about it. Now, some congressmen are putting forward legislation to try to do something about it. Some of our Republican uh, Congress people are actually trying to do something about it, but they don't have the full weight of the Republican Party, to push it and make it happen. Because we have so many rhinos and turncoats, traitors, who need to be primaried out of Congress and out of the Senate as well. Um, so, but hopefully our country will wake up in time to save this country, and hopefully the leaders in Europe and in the United Kingdom, etc., will wake up in time to save their countries as well. But we'll see. There are some things happening right now that kind of look sort of positive. I'm not going to talk on them just yet. I want to see what happens with them before I talk on them. But there are some things that look pretty positive, look pretty good. Currently going on in our government, in our federal government, that you know could take us forward by leaps and bounds, um, in the venture to attempt to save our country. So, what do you all think? What do you all think? Let me know in that chat. Come on, y'all talk to me. Up next from the Federalist, we have this story. Reform broken legal immigration system that welcomes terrorists and hurts Americans. Oh, part of the title was hidden. Senator Schmidt says we need to reform broken legal immigration system that welcomes terrorists and hurts Americans. That makes more sense. So, Senator Eric Schmidt is calling out America's broken legal immigration system following 2 terrorist attacks by naturalized U.S. citizens. I'm going to repeat that again. Naturalized U.S. citizens from the third world. Okay. The moment came on Thursday when the Show Me State's junior senator joined Fox News's The Ingram Angle to discuss the ongoing Democrat-led shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. Schmidt blasted the Democrats' open border policies and espoused support for the Trump administration's closing of the U.S. Mexico border and deportation of illegal aliens. He also notably took the time to address the need to reform the country's legal immigration system. Quote, a lot of these people have come in legally. A lot of American workers have been displaced by foreign workers. A lot of American students have been displaced by these visa mills at universities and tax breaks that companies get after the fact, Schmidt said. Quote, so we've got a lot of work to do, but we clearly have laws right now that need to be enforced. And that's right. He's absolutely correct in that. The comments came hours after two foreign born U.S. citizens carried out separate terrorist attacks in Virginia and Michigan. In Virginia, 36-year-old Mohammed Baylor Jallow, a former Army National Guardsman from Sierra Leone, reportedly shouted Allahu Akbar while opening fire inside an Old Dominion University facility. Gallo was previously convicted for supporting ISIS in 2017, but was released from custody by the Biden administration in 2024. The now deceased Islamic suspect was reportedly disarmed by a group of ROTC students. By the way, just bragging on those ROTC students, they literally, not figuratively, not metaphorically, they literally beat that guy to death with their bare hands. No joke. Those students literally beat him to death with their bare hands. Freaking good on them. Well, his attack, however, resulted in the death of Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw, an ODU professor and the school's ROTC program chair, who previously served overseas in the Middle East. Shaw was awarded 2 Bronze Stars for his service. In Michigan, Lebanese-born Ayman Mohammed Ghazali allegedly used a vehicle to attack the Temple Israel synagogue in West Bloomfield. According to Fox News, Ghazali entered the United States in May of 2011, quote, on an IR-1 immigrant visa as the spouse of a U.S. citizen, and later obtained U.S. citizenship in February of 2016. Ghazali was reportedly killed by members of the synagogue's security team upon exiting his vehicle with a gun. There were no reported casualties as a result of the team's heroism. The only casualty was the perpetrator. Quote, we need to make sure the border remains closed. The deportations need to continue regardless of the Democrats whining about it. And then also, we need to reform our legal immigration system, Schmidt said. And he is exactly correct on all of those points. We most definitely need to make some changes to our legal immigration system. I believe that there are certain people who should not be allowed to immigrate to the United States, and those are people from third world countries, especially the Islamic countries, because they're just not compatible with the United States, with Western values, Western laws, etc., etc. It's that simple. Plus, also, the language of our legal immigration system needs to be a little bit clearer, especially when it comes to people who are committing fraud to become a citizen. First off, it needs to be clearer on the fact that the Constitution of the United States says that you can hold no allegiances to any other entity, meaning any other country or territory or anything of that nature, and be a United States citizen. You have to renounce any of those allegiances in order to become a United States citizen. Um, However, we have so many people, even right up in our Congress, that have dual citizenship. And by having a dual citizenship, you are declaring that you are not singularly allegiant to the United States, that you do hold allegiance to a foreign entity, a foreign country, and therefore, you are fraudulently becoming a citizen of the United States because you hold allegiances to another entity besides the United States. The Constitution is clear that you can hold no allegiances to any other entity. But apparently it is not clear enough. You know that it still happens that we still have people becoming naturalized citizens in the United States and still holding on to citizenships to other countries. That is immigration fraud, clear and simple. That language needs to be made extremely crystal clear and understandable to even the most idiotic of bureaucrat and politician. So that we have recourse when it comes to we find someone who is guilty of immigration fraud. We can strip them of their naturalization and put them out. The Tai Chi ad. You mean that? I needed that. That was good. Thank you for the laugh, Joseph. I'm glad to see you in the chat. By the way, yeah. But anyway, yeah. Most definitely, our legal immigration system needs to be kind of reworked a little bit, and we need to bolster our deportation system, and make it so that these rogue judges can't, put their noses in. Make it so that it is entirely solely the providence of the executive branch and those delegated power through the executive branch, because Donald Trump, the United States president, is the only member of the executive branch. All the rest are delegates under his power. So but these judges are attempting, a judicial coup, as it were. They're usurping the power of the president of the United States when they throw these monkey wrenches in the deportation, because the sole purview of foreign policy and um, national security, which immigration falls under national security, sole purview of foreign policy and national security belongs to Donald Trump himself, and then he delegates power to those beneath him to enforce uh, those policies. So, what do you all think? Besides that Tai Chi ad needs to calm down. Let me know in the chat. Come on, talk to me, y'all. I'm going to move on to the next article, though. But you can still talk to me about this one or any of the others I've talked about today so far. Again, from the Federalist. This week's terror attacks prove immigration isn't, quote, good just because it's legal. Yes, I thoroughly agree with that headline. It's like they used to say about science. Science tends to get so caught up in the can we do this? Can we do that? You know, they don't think about necessarily should we do this and should we do that? You know, just because something may be technically legal doesn't necessarily mean it needs to happen. You know, um, so let's go ahead and get into this. Thursday's attacks are just the latest reminder that good immigration policy isn't simply a matter of legality. Less than a month ago, Senator Ted Cruz said his, quote, approach to immigration is very simple: legal, good; illegal, bad. Not necessarily so. But a series of recent terrorist attacks proves that legal immigration can be just as dangerous as illegal immigration. On Thursday, Mohamed Baylor Jallo, a Sierra Leone national, opened fire at Virginia's Old Dominion University, killing Brandon Shaw. Jallo came here legally, but his legality didn't stop him from providing material support to ISIS, the Islamic terrorist organization. In 2016, it also didn't stop him from murdering an American hero. That same legality didn't stop 41-year-old Ayman Mohammed Ghazali, a Lebanese national, who came to this country in 2011 and was naturalized in 2016, from crashing his car into a Michigan synagogue on Thursday while armed with a rifle. Nor did it stop Senegal national Ndiago Diagne, who opened fire at an Austin, Texas bar earlier this month, killing 3 and wounding 13 more. Diagne came to the United States in 2000 and was later naturalized in 2013. Meanwhile, New Yorkers were spared on Saturday after 2 radical Islamists whose parents immigrated here from Afghanistan and Turkey allegedly tried to bomb anti-Islam protesters outside of New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani's official residence. Legality also didn't stop the Boulder, Colorado terror attack, allegedly by an Egyptian national, or the fatal shooting of a National Guardsman in Washington, D.C., allegedly at the hands of an Afghan national. In each of these cases, the suspects themselves were either legal immigrants at some point or the children of immigrants. But coming here legally did not prevent radicalization or violence. Senator Eric Schmidt told Fox News' Laura Ingraham on Thursday that the United States needs to have a serious conversation about legal immigration. Quote, we need to reform our legal immigration system. A lot of these people have come in legally. A lot of American workers have been displaced by foreign workers, Schmidt said. A lot of American students have been displaced by these visa mills at universities and tax breaks that companies get after the fact. Well, see, here's the thing. Here's the thing. They were still attacks nonetheless. And you can expect, here's the thing, you can expect with uh, these Islamists, you can expect that they will escalate. The trans shooters, yes, they have done more harm, but they're in most cases, if you look at their manifestos, they always seem to have a manifesto for some reason. I don't know. But if you look at their manifestos, they're copycatting somebody else. Every single one of them wrote that that they got the idea to do what they did from this other person who did something similar. So they're copycatting somebody else. These Islamists, they're actually doing terrorist activities. You have the trans shooters are all copycat criminals. The Islamists, they're actually doing terrorist activities, and they're doing it for a reason, So, you know, the white Christian lady at the school was mean to me, so I already had in my mind that I was going to shoot up a school somewhere because I admire whoever that did it before me. You know, not the same. And you can guarantee that they are going to escalate, and they're going to become the Islamist attacks are going to escalate, and they're going to become more often. We have over 18,000 plus known Islamist terrorists inside the United States. Okay, and they've stated that they don't really know the true number, but they do know at least 18,000 are inside the United States. So, we have trans people who are roughly 0.1% of the United States population, and we have 18,000 plus, up to an actually unknown number. We don't know for real the total amount, but they know of at least 18,000 known terrorists inside the United States. Which would you be paying a whole lot of attention to? You'd be paying a whole lot of attention to the ones that are going to um, progress in frequency as well as in harm. Now, the trans attacks are bad, and they need to be stopped. And, we need to get these so-called trans people some mental health care. That's why my hat says "Make asylums great again," Joseph. Um, and by the way, Trump did sign an executive order to do just that, to make asylums great again. So, yeah, we're working on the whole trans situation. Hopefully, we can get some laws into place where we can get these people some help and no longer have trans shooters. Now, as long as Muslims exist and as long as they exist within our country, there will be Islamist terror. There will be Islamist terrorist attacks. So we're working on that front too. Anyway, back to the article. For decades, Washington has operated under the false pretense that immigration is objectively good so long as it's done legally. And even I've been guilty of saying that, even though I do know and realize and have known and realized for a long time that not all legal immigration is actually good. I've said before that if you want to come in legally, you're welcome. If you want to come in illegally, you're absolutely not welcome. But I do also at the same time realize that not all legal immigrants are actually a good thing. That's right. Exactly right. That is my point. You know, and although yes, they say that not all of that 250,000 that you just mentioned, Joseph, they say not all of that 250,000 are going to be terrorists. Well, see, here's the thing: the jihadist terrorists, you know, um, they are the snake in the grass because they're hidden by the Muslim people. You can't tell the terrorist from the non-terrorist. But see, the the jihadist terrorist is the snake in the grass. The rest of them are the grass that hides the snake. Because again, as I said, you can't tell one from the other, and they are um, they are allowed in Islam. They are allowed to lie, to conceal, to deceive the infidel, anyone who is not Muslim, you know, and they are actually required, if necessary, to hide the jihadist, to lie for the jihadist, to supply the jihadist with whatever he or she may need. Generally, it's a he, but I have actually seen some she's in amongst the uh, jihadist groups. Um, so, because females can be useful tools to a terrorist. So, well, it's not a lobotomy. The you likened the trans surgeries to the lobotomies that they used to use in eugenics. It's still eugenics, but what it is, it's sterilization. It's not a lobotomy. These people, they go in with mental health issues. The body dysmorphia and gender dysphoria, the two known severe mental health problems that cause transgenderism. They go in with those severe mental health issues, and they're told, "Hey, we'll just chop off your whacker, and make you a female, at least in appearances, and everything will be good." Statistics show that the suicide rates among those people goes up after they have transitioned, and they are more likely to commit suicide after they have transitioned than they were before. In fact, among these people with body dysmorphia and gender dysphoria, um, the larger numbers of them tend to, if you do not give them the hormones and the puberty blockers and the surgeries and all that stuff, um, they generally tend to grow out of the whole trans thing, and become, they realize they become, a normal person. Now, some of them may decide, well, okay, well, now I realize that, I was not, born in the wrong body or anything like that. I'm just gay. See, transgenderism is like one of the ultimates in homophobia. Because, oh no, I can't be gay. I must be in the wrong body. I'm the whole total opposite sex, just trapped in the wrong body. No, I can't be gay. What? Yes, you can. um, you know, so I mean, not that I support homosexuality. I absolutely don't. But you know, it's kind of an example there. The majority of these people, if left to their own, left alone by the medical establishment, as far as the hormones and the puberty blockers and all of that, they generally tend to grow out of it, and and many of them, realize that, they're actually comfortable in their own skin, and they are just a normal everyday boy or girl, that was just confused there for a while. You know, and some, like as I said, some of them may decide that they were gay or whatever, but the surgeries and the puberty blockers, the puberty blockers are the exact same chemicals that they give to uh, sex offenders, the more heinous of them, to do chemical castration. They're the exact same chemicals, so they are literally sterilizing these people, ending the bloodline. So once they die off, there is no further um, weak DNA, as the eugenics people would call it. Um, yeah, probably. It probably will be viewed in a similar light. Um, it probably will be viewed in the future, Joseph, as, a similar light as the lobotomies. But see, it's all, in my opinion, I don't have any actual proof other than the fact of what they are doing. Right, right. Like my shirt on my merch store. By the way, go down to the description below, click that link, and go to my merch store, and you can get that shirt. Trans is just gays with extra steps. So, um, but yeah, as I was saying, yeah, it probably will be viewed in the future in a similar light, but it is still, it's another version, another angle of eugenics, just like Planned Parenthood. So what they're trying to do is just like the original eugenics program. They are trying to eliminate the bad DNA from the gene pool, um, the so-called weak DNA, the uh, unacceptable, the unwanted. Um, so but they're allowing, they're making people believe that it's their own choice to do these things. To sterilize yourself, uh, to kill your baby, etc. Um, you notice that most of the Planned Parenthood abortion clinics are right in the middle of certain neighborhoods, generally minority neighborhoods, you know, um, poor neighborhoods, etc. These people are the ones that are considered by the eugenics program back in the day as lesser human beings. In fact, many of the people who ran the eugenics program saw them as not even human beings. So therefore, they are um, they're limiting the population of those lesser human beings uh, through you know Planned Parenthood, through abortion, and also after so many abortions, um, many women are infertile, sterile, uh, just because of the abuse to their reproductive system. And sometimes, even after just the first one, they become sterile. Then at the same time, you have the transgender people who are willingly taking these chemical castration chemicals that are being sold as puberty blockers to them, and they're taking female hormones if they're a male, they're taking male hormones if they are a female, you know, which which wreaks havoc on their body. Have you noticed that when a so-called trans person gets triggered, they get extremely violent and they go into these rages. There are video after video after video on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, you name it, of these individuals, getting extremely violent, and that's because they're taking these large amounts of hormones for the wrong sex, and their body uh, doesn't know how to process that, and it throws them into chaos in their brain and in their body and etc. So they're easily triggered to violence. You know, but that's neither here nor there. The whole point is they are sterilizing these people so that they can't reproduce, and eventually they will die out, and that DNA will be eliminated from the gene pool. It's said that they don't reproduce; they recruit because they're sterilizing themselves. You know, and that's the genius of the this new form of eugenics, is they're choosing to do it to themselves. And the funny thing is, back during the original eugenics program, you talked about the lobotomies. In many cases, those lobotomies were performed literally at the request of the person getting the lobotomy, because they were convinced that the lobotomy would make them well. The doctors convinced them that the lobotomy would be a good thing. It would make them better. So, many of them willingly underwent the lobotomies. Now, a lot of them were in institutions, and they didn't have a choice. But many of them, a lot more than people think, actually allowed it to be done to themselves, uh, by choice, because a doctor told them it was a good thing. Just like, one of my exes was what, 4 or 5 months pregnant, and had a doctor tell her that electroconvulsive therapy, electroshock therapy, electroconvulsive therapy would be a good thing for both her and the baby inside her. Well, needless to say, she never went back and saw that doctor again. So, but these doctors, they will, push you and try to get you to do these treatments that are actually harmful for you. And the sooner the American people and people around the world in general learn that, you know, the better, because a lot of these unnecessary treatments, and treatments that just really actually make things worse, um, will fade away and not continue to be performed. So anyway, let's get back to the article. Um, I'll restart this paragraph right here. For decades, Washington has operated under the false pretense that immigration is objectively good so long as it's done legally. That assumption has led us to suicidal decisions like admitting Senegalese, Lebanese, and Sierra Leone terrorists who murdered Americans or attempted to do so. It has also, as Schmidt mentioned, led to the displacing of American workers and students, as well as a disruption in national unity and cohesion. As these terrorist attacks show, legality alone does not make someone American in culture and norms, nor does it ensure that these immigrants share the same political and religious values that underpin our republic. Alexander Hamilton warned of this very reality in 1802, saying that it is, quote, extremely unlikely that foreigners would, quote, bring with them the temperate love of liberty that is so necessary for a republic. Instead, people tend to bring with them the same habits and politics and cultural norms formed in the places that they are now leaving. When immigration policy ignores these differences, it leads to the importation of radical ideologies like radical Islam. Well, and I don't like that term because there actually is no such thing as radical Islam. It's just Islam. The radical ideas and the radical behaviors and all that's part of Islam. They're just obeying their prophet. They're obeying the Quran. They're not radical. They're just Muslims. So, um, but anyway, to continue, like radical Islam and its terrorist behavior, and a population of foreigners who are simply unable to assimilate to the American way of life. Now, that's not to say all immigrants are terrorists, but Americans should not be forced to tolerate even just a few terrorist attacks for the sake of propping up a lax immigration system that fails to grapple with reality. Immigration policy is always supposed to be the benefit of American people. I'm going to read that again. Immigration policy is always supposed to be to the benefit of the American people. And there's little justification for importing a large number of third world foreigners who come from places that do not promote Western values. There are also less deadly but still negative effects that result from migration from vastly different cultures and people, too, as pointed out by Hamilton. As I previously wrote, not all cultures produce the same outcomes. If all cultures were equal, then every single nation in the world would look like the United States in political, legal, and social framework. But they don't, which is exactly why our immigration policy must reflect that reality and consider the cultural, political, and religious backgrounds of everyone we admit. And of course, my page glitched. So now I got to figure out where the heck I glitched to. There we go. The standard cannot be simply whether someone will obey our laws once they arrive. That is the bare minimum expected of anyone living in the United States. Immigration should be reserved for those who bring a skill or a talent that our country genuinely needs. Our immigration policy should not blindly sweep in people who add to the population while bringing vastly different cultural, religious, and political assumptions. Had a discerning and measured immigration policy been in place, terrorists from Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Egypt and Afghanistan would not be here and their acts of violence would not have taken place. Absolutely true. Thursday's attacks are just the latest reminder that good immigration policy, really? That are just a reminder that good immigration policy isn't simply a matter of legality. It's a matter of who comes to the United States and what beliefs and culture and religion and political assumptions they bring with them. Exactly true. We have got to be more picky about who we let into our country. You know, I mean that lack of uh, that lack of having filters, lack of filters, you know, is extremely dangerous. We've seen it. I mean, those people that did 9/11, they didn't come from somewhere outside the country. All right, man. Later on, you have a good night yourself, Joseph. Um, they didn't come from outside the country. They came from right here inside the United States. They were so-called immigrants. So I mean, that shows just how dangerous letting just anyone in just because they asked, you know, that shows how dangerous that can be. That lack of filters. We're not filtering out people from certain countries. We're not filtering out people that could be dangerous to this country. We're not filtering out the ones that are not a benefit to this country. And that's something that we absolutely have to do. You know. But anyway, let's move on. Excuse me, y'all. The heck was that? Mm. Oh, starting to feel my throat. Anyway, oh, okay. Now I know what that was. That noise. Somebody outside being rude and honking their horn. Anyway, up next, America's survival hinges on Trump standing firm on mass deportations. And it does. Excuse me, y'all. It absolutely does. Because allowing all these millions of people into the United States just willy nilly has majorly destabilized our country to a degree that most people don't even realize. You know, and most people just don't understand just how far the Biden administration took our country downward. You know, they the Biden administration really came close to collapsing our country. And President Trump and his administration are trying to inch us, back to, solid ground at the very least, if not back to, a good standing. You so it most certainly does. Our survival does hinge on getting these people out of our country. I mean, we can't stop, until we've gotten them all gone. And that's one of the reasons that I keep pushing hard on the voting thing, because see, we've got to maintain control of the House and the Senate, because Democrats have already told us what they're going to do as soon as they gain power in one or the other house. Okay, they've already told us what they're going to do, and they're going to go scorched earth on conservatives, on Republicans. You know, so anybody that supported Trump, especially, and they're going to take everything that Trump has done so far. They're going to reverse it, and they're, you saw how it went under Biden. They're going to take it even further. And we're going to literally watch the decline of the United States of America. Trump has a once in a lifetime chance to deliver on a mandate that will determine whether America exists at all. He should take the chance that was given to him. President Barack Obama told Americans in a 2014 national address that his administration would focus deportation efforts on, quote, actual threats to our security, felons, not families, criminals, not children, gang members, not a mother who's working hard to provide for her kids. If you're a criminal, you'll be deported. A White House fact sheet issued the same day reinforced that message, saying enforcement would prioritize, quote, people who threaten national security and public safety. 7 years later, the Biden administration would issue similar guidance. Immigration enforcement priorities would focus on, quote, non citizens who are a threat to our national security, public safety, and border security. The administration also made clear that simply being in the country illegally, quote, should not alone be the basis of an enforcement action against them. Democrat administrations communicated that deporting the worst offenders was acceptable. But otherwise, the American people would need to tolerate and normalize the presence of millions of people in the country illegally. The backlash to that approach would ultimately help catapult President Donald Trump back into the White House in 2024. After the Biden administration flooded the country with millions of illegal aliens in 4 short years, overwhelming schools, hospitals, and hotels, and putting strain on national cohesion, Trump promised to be the president to right that wrong. The promise resonated. A Pew Research poll from September of 2024 found that for 82% of Trump supporters, immigration was a leading issue. Poll also found that the number of voters who viewed immigration as, quote, very important issue increased by nearly 10% between 2020 and 2024. A separate poll found 88% of Trump supporters backed, quote, mass deportations of immigrants living in the country illegally. And at the 2024 Republican National Convention, many Trump supporters held signs reading, quote, mass deportations now. It was a slogan that many thought captured Trump's perspective on deportations and immigration enforcement more broadly, namely, upholding law and protecting America's sovereignty required more than just targeting violent criminal aliens, as Democrats had done in the past. It meant reversing the reality of mass illegal immigration as a whole, which is why it's hard to ignore voices in the White House who are reportedly urging Republicans to adopt the very same policy position that they were elected to reject. Axios reported on Tuesday that the White House is instructing, quote, House Republicans to stop talking about mass deportations. White House Deputy Chief of Staff James Blair is pushing Republicans to talk about deporting violent criminal illegal aliens rather than mass deportations, according to the report. Blair seemingly confirmed the strategy in a post on X. Quote, Republicans want to keep deporting the violent criminal illegals that Joe Biden and the Democrats in Congress let in. Democrats want to shield them from deportation, which is why they unanimously support sanctuary cities. Republicans will get the violent criminals out. Democrats will throw the border back open. Choose accordingly. But as Axios reported, quote, mass deportations were central to the GOP's 2024 campaign message. Quote, mass deportations signaled a change from the Obama Biden years message of focusing just on violent criminal aliens. Trump's promise suggested that all illegal aliens, regardless of whether they have committed additional crimes beyond illegal entry, would be deported. Whether the reported messaging shift is a matter of genuine policy shift or just a PR strategy ahead of November, telling Republicans to focus on deporting violent criminals rather than, quote, mass deportations raises concerns about whether we are returning to the Obama Biden policies that voters rejected in 2024. But that's not what voters voted for. Voters supported mass deportations because they've seen what happens when leftist politicians and some conservatives flood the country with illegal aliens. Consider the effect of mass migration on schools. A September 2025 report by Documented found that over 3 years, more than 220,000, quote, asylum seekers and immigrant families came to the Big Apple. And, quote, many have, quote, school age children. Quote, citywide, more than 13,000 new English language learners entered the public school system between the 2022 and 2023 academic years, according to Documented, which added that New York City public schools were, quote, inundated with students who can't speak English. The schools were also suffering from overcrowding and were experiencing significant staffing shortages. New York City wasn't alone. Chicago has experienced the same inundation and overcrowding. Mayor Brandon Johnson said migrants were settling in already disinvested communities. In other words, American students already lacking proper resources and in education were being sidelined because migrants overwhelmed the district with their children. One teacher said the migrants were, quote, dropped at our doorstep and we're supposed to keep it moving. Except these children, educate them, and keep it moving, according to Chalkbeat Chicago, apparently a publication for educators. But it wasn't just school overcrowding in Chicago. Black Americans reported feeling left in the dust while leaders prioritized illegal aliens over carrying out basic duties of government. The Associated Press reported in 2024 that, quote, Black residents are frustrated that long-standing needs are not being met while the city's newly arrived are cared for with a sense of urgency and with their tax dollars. Residents say their long-standing problems like high crime, homelessness, and unemployment were, quote, left unsolved while resources were expended to take care of illegal aliens. Illegal aliens also affect elections to the detriment of U.S. citizens. Congressional apportionment and electoral college votes are based on population, not citizenship. Blue states that have incentivized mass illegal migration have increased representation that dilutes American citizens' representation. Representative Yvette Clarke said as much in 2021, stating her district could, quote, absorb a significant number of these migrants because, quote, I need more people in my district just for redistricting purposes. But perhaps most important is the effect of mass migration on national cohesion and ultimately America's survival. Alexander Hamilton warned in 1802, quote, the safety of a republic depends essentially on the energy of a common national sentiment. on a uniformity of principles and habits, on the exemption of the citizens from foreign bias and prejudice, and on that love of country, which will almost invariably be found to be closely connected with birth, education, and family. But mass illegal migration makes it difficult to have that quote common national sentiment and quote uniformity of principles that binds a self-governing people together. Assimilation becomes very difficult, if not impossible, when millions of foreigners flood the country in large numbers. That failure is evident in schools where millions of non English speaking students place a heavy burden on resources after being, quote, dropped on the doorstep of communities. It's also evident at protests opposing the enforcement of federal immigration law when foreign flags, like the Mexican flag, are being waved while the American flag is being burned. These realities are why the campaign promise of mass deportations gained traction in the first place. For millions of Republicans, quote, mass deportations was a mandate, not just a good campaign slogan. Trump has a once in a lifetime chance to deliver on a mandate that will decide whether America exists at all. He should take the chance that was given to him. Yeah, and most definitely, we should not allow these rhino Republicans to regress us back to Democrat um, deportation policies. We need to continue with the deportations. In fact, I personally believe that we need to increase our frequency of deportation. We need to do something about these rogue judges that are trying to slow it down, and we speed up the deportation of these illegal aliens. So that's my opinion, anyway. Um, we need to get our country back, and the only way we're going to do it is to get all these people that the Biden administration, President Autopen, um, brought in, during that 4 years. We need to get them all back out of here and more, actually. I personally say, you know, any illegals or, any so called immigrants that came in illegally, any that came in and refused to assimilate, you know, should be removed from this country. Um, Anyone who is a part of or supporter of Islam needs to go. Anyone who came in legally, illegally, whatever, and was eventually naturalized. Um, they need to be looked at, and the ones who committed fraud need to be put out, and all all naturalized citizens need to be removed from our government. And I don't just mean Congress and the Senate. I mean all of our government. Whatever the position, if it's a government position at all, and they are a naturalized citizen, they need to be removed from that position. Because I'm sorry, but foreigners shouldn't have any influence whatsoever on our government at all. Period. So let's move on to the next article, and y'all can feel free to jump in that chat and talk to me. Don't be afraid. I will talk back. And we can have a discussion or whatever. Okay, up next from the Gateway Pundit, we have war in the GOP. Representative Anna Paulina Luna calls for primary challenges against Rhino senators blocking Save America Act, and urges a, quote, convention of states to bypass the corrupt DC uniparty. So Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna is unleashing hell on the spineless rhinos in the Senate who are sabotaging the Save America Act, the critical legislation designed to safeguard our elections from illegal alien voters and Democrat fraud. In a bombshell statement on X, Luna declared a war, calling for primary challenges against these traitors to the America First agenda and even advocating for a convention of states to bypass the corrupt uniparty swamp in D.C. The Florida Congresswoman unloaded on Senate rhinos who are hiding behind the, quote, talking filibuster to block the wildly popular Save America Act, the bill that would finally require proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections. The legislation already passed by the House would require proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote and mandate voter ID nationwide, measures supporters say are necessary to secure American elections ahead of the 2026 midterms. But the bill is now stalled in the Senate, where Democrats are united in opposition, and several rhinos have resisted altering Senate rules to force it through. With Republicans holding 53 seats, the party currently lacks the 60 votes needed to overcome a filibuster. Luna didn't mince words. Quote, the House GOP has a lot of flamethrowers. Every single senator that is hiding behind the talking filibuster needs to be primaried by one of the House members with a spine. POTUS should hold off on endorsing any more senators until they do their jobs. And there is that post. As the Gateway Pundit previously reported, Luna exposed Thune's plan to cave to Schumer and kill the Save America Act, calling it, quote, very disturbing and accusing him of ignoring the will of the people. She also blew up Murkowski for outright lying about her voting rights record, catching the Alaska rhino in a web of deceit while pushing back against efforts to secure our elections. Now, with up to 50 House Republicans vowing to halt the Senate business until the SAVE Act passes, Luna is taking it a step further. She's threatened to shut down the House floor if the Senate doesn't act. And she's urging President Trump to withhold endorsements from any senator who won't fight for voter ID. And there is that post. Good afternoon, America. This week, the Senate will learn all their bills will die in the House until they can get election integrity passed. We will kill every single one of their bills for as long as it takes. Luna is now endorsing the Convention of States as the ultimate weapon against the deep state. Quote, it is time for a convention of states. Congress will never term limit itself, and as you are seeing, it is broken. Too many of these cats get up to D.C. and hop onto the uniparty train. The problem is the uniparty doesn't work for you. It works for special interests. And there is that post. This echoes calls from grassroots conservatives to see the SAVE Act standoff as proof that only an Article 5 convention can drain the swamp for good. Convention of the States on Facebook posts, it's time for, quote, we the people to use an Article 5 convention to send career politicians home, recapture control of this country, and save America for our children and grandchildren. A convention of states, often called an Article 5 convention, allows state legislators, rather than Congress, to propose constitutional amendments. The idea stems directly from Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution, which provides two methods for proposing constitutional amendments, one through Congress and another through a convention requested by the states. While Congress has used its authority to propose all 27 constitutional amendments in American history, the state driven convention method has never been used. It's been threatened many times, but never actually done. Under Article 5, state legislatures have the power to request a national convention to propose constitutional amendments if 2/3 of the states, currently 34 out of 50, submit formal applications to Congress. If that threshold is reached, number one, Congress must call the convention. Number two, delegates from the states gather to propose constitutional amendments. Number three, any proposed amendment must then be ratified by 3/4 of the states, 38 states, before it becomes law. As of 2026, at least 20 state legislatures have passed resolutions supporting the convention of the states' effort. Some of the states that have adopted the resolution include Georgia, Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, Arizona, Missouri, Arkansas, Utah, Mississippi, Wisconsin, Nebraska, West Virginia, South Carolina, and Kansas, the most recent addition in 2026. Because 34 states are required, supporters still need 14 additional states before Congress would be required to call the convention. So there you go. Maybe we'll get something done. I don't know if you're going to be able to do anything about the so-called uniparty, but I don't know. Maybe we'll get something done. Hmm. Up next, the story that's on my thumbnail that we're all here for. Democrats spent your money, quote, clearing the maps, and they want to do it again. Oh. During the Biden years, the State Department reportedly spent $72,000 on making the maps of European countries, quote, more gay. Here's an example of what America will go back to if Democrats get back into power: clearing the maps. During the Biden years, the State Department reportedly spent $72,000 on making maps, quote, more gay. That's according to testimony from Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy, Sarah Rogers, questioned at a recent House Foreign Affairs Committee meeting. Committee Chairman, Representative Brian Mast, wanted to get to the bottom of a host of crazy projects and initiatives the Biden administration funded with our money. House Foreign Affairs Committee majority posted on X, Representative Brian Mast said, "How do you make a map more gay?" Undersecretary PD brings receipts exposing just what the Biden State Department wasted tax dollars on for 4 years. And here is the video.
Can you tell me what is queering the map?
So I think we were trying to make the maps more gay.
Literally? That's
Well,
how do you
don't
make a map
know.
more gay?
I mean, especially
Or
with
gay
AI,
at all?
since the age of cartography, we've had pretty good maps, but maybe they weren't gay enough. So I know also I took critical theory in college. I think sometimes people use queer as a verb. I do understand that the maps that we were trying to make gay were, I think, of Czechia and Slovakia. So maybe those countries asked for it. I doubt it, but I don't know.
We do have real things to work on in Congress, like what's going on with the imminent threat of Iran. And it is embarrassing that we have to talk about the fact that things like this were funded. Non-binary and trans francophones, linguistic attitudes and ideologies towards inclusive French in Montreal, Canada, these things. I'm going to give you a list. My time has expired. I'm going to give you a list of these, and any of these that you can provide me the receipt for, the Facebook link to where they wanted to take photos of how they were doing a DEIA flash mob in Kyrgyzstan, whatever documentation they have of all of these things, we would love to see that and would absolutely love to know the individuals specifically that were busy writing these grants, because they have no business receiving another paycheck from the people of the United States of America. In that, I will recognize Representative Schneider.
I thoroughly 100% agree with everything he just said. Oh, the congressman was particularly perplexed about the State Department's LGBTQ focused map making process. Quote, "Can you tell me what is queering the map?" asked Rogers. Quote, "So I think we were trying to make the maps more gay, the undersecretary said. Uh, Mass understandably sounded incredulous. How does one go about making a map more gay or gay at all? And I agree. You know, how do you do that? Quote, since the age of cartography, that's map making, for those who don't know, we've had pretty good maps, but maybe they weren't gay enough, Rogers said. Thankfully, the undersecretary took, quote, critical theory, Marxist indoctrination in college. Sometimes people use queer as a verb, she said. Um, quote, I do understand that the maps we were trying to make gay were, I think, of Czechia and Slovakia. So maybe those countries asked for it. I doubt it, but I don't know, Rogers said. According to the Library of Congress, quote, queering the map is a community generated mapping project that geolocates queer moments, memories, and histories in relation to a physical space. Well, that's queer. Rogers apologized to Czechia, the European country that also identifies as the Czech Republic, and Slovakia for her predecessor's penchant for, quote, queering their maps. Quote, this is why future public diplomacy grants will be streamlined, accountable, and channeled toward real American interests like free speech and sports diplomacy, she said in a post on X. And here is her post. Czechia and Slovakia are great countries. I'm sorry that my predecessors, quote, queered your maps. This is why future public diplomacy grants will be streamlined, accountable, and channeled toward real American interests like free speech and sports diplomacy. And she, quote, tweeted that clip that we just watched. LGBTQ activists got huffy after Slovakians had the audacity to approve pro family constitutional amendments recognizing that there are only two sexes, restricting adoption to straight couples, and banning surrogacy. Mass said the State Department programs on President Joe Biden's watch included a DEI flash mob. What is a DEI flash mob? I know what a flash mob is, but what is a DEI flash mob? I have no clue. And that was in I have too many consonants with no vowels. I don't know how to pronounce that. A diversity roadshow in India and diversity and inclusion programs in Luxembourg, Spain, New Zealand, Canada, and Malaysia. There was money for a program to teach trans and intersex leaders in India, Mass said, and a study on, quote, the relationship between collective movement, meaning walking, boxing, dancing, and systemic conditions of anti trans violence. Quote, any of these that you could provide me the receipt for, the Facebook link where they wanted people to take photos of how they were doing a DEI flash mob, whatever documentation they have of all these things. We would love to see that, Mass directed Rogers at the hearing. Quote, and we would absolutely love to know the individual specifically, who are busy writing these grants because they have no business receiving another paycheck from the people of the United States of America. As Sarah Wilder recently reported from the Federalist, an early Biden directive to the State Department demanded non governmental organizations, NGOs, report the many ways that they funded and supported, quote, advancing the human rights of LGBTQI plus persons around the world. In a report, the State Department called the initiative a, quote, U.S. foreign policy priority. One of President Donald Trump's first actions of his second term was to exercise the DEI agenda from the executive branch. The programs were not only an egregious waste of taxpayer money, they came with discriminatory practices through identity based preferences. The quote, the public release of these plans demonstrated immense public waste and shameful discrimination that ends today, Trump wrote in an executive order on his first day in office. Quote, Americans deserve a government committed to serving every person with equal dignity and respect, and to expending precious taxpayer resources on making America great. Trump was elected in 2024 in no small part on his predecessor's insane focus on transgender and other DEI policies. The GOP filled the airwaves with campaign ads hammering Democrats' support of biological males competing in female sports. One Trump ad took aim at the then Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democrats' DEI presidential candidate, in a campaign ad asserting Kamala is for they, them. Donald Trump is for you. Even Democratic Party strategist James Carville, who suffers from a rabid case of Trump derangement syndrome, has advised Democrats to stay away from, quote, pronoun politics. He also told Ilhan Omar to get out of Congress. You know, so yeah, there's that. Jonathan Turley posted on X, I have written about what I call the, quote, age of rage. Now, rage is addictive. What people rarely admit is that they like it. Until now, warning, foul language, cue James Carville. And I'm not going to play that. If you would like to view that, then just go on the Federalist. It's a news website. I believe it's thefederalist.com. Let's see here. Yeah, I believe it's thefederalist.com. And find this story and click that link. It doesn't seem many congressional Democrats are listening to the old man. Democrats are doubling down on the crazy, promising to bring back the unpopular radical left policies of the Biden era when they get back into power. They're saying a whole lot more than that when they get back into power. Quote, we can't be just anti-Trump, Michigan Representative Debbie Dingell, House Democrat caucus policy leader, told the Washington Post in late February, quote, we have to have an agenda. They've shown us what that radical agenda looks like: abolishing immigration and customs enforcement, reopening the border, turning the free more violent criminals, demanding disastrous government run health insurance, making it easier for non citizens to vote in elections, and pushing race and gender obsessed politics. The far left, that is now the engine of the party, is driving this bus despite limited appeal from the broader liberal base. According to a recent poll by the Manhattan Institute, the leftists don't care. They are, quote, queering the Democrat Party, so to speak, and the Biden years will look downright moderate compared to the political map they're envisioning. So I want to see those receipts when they are presented and etc. About uh, how to queer the map, as they say. How about you, Hall? But I don't know. It's got to be more than just marking uh, gay landmarks or whatever, or landmarks important to the alphabet people. You know, I don't know. It's got to be more than that. So I want to see those receipts. And we have up next, again, also from the Federalists, First Circuit halts rogue judge's bid to stop Trump's third country deportations. You know, when they have an order stating that they can't go back to their home country, generally ICE will send them to a third country, a third party country that will accept the refugee. So, um, a rogue judge has attempted to stop these so-called third country deportations, and apparently a First Circuit court has halted that. It said, "Whoa, no, you can't do that." Apparently, in a win for the Trump administration, a federal appeals court temporarily blocked a lower court ruling on Wednesday that sought to hinder the government's deportation operations. In its short order, the three-judge panel for the First Circuit Court of Appeals placed an administrative stay, a pause, on a recent decision by District Judge Brian Murphy. The Biden appointee issued a ruling last month declaring the administration's efforts to deport illegal aliens to third countries, nations other than an individual's country of origin, to be unlawful and blocked its enforcement. The First Circuit panel of two Biden appointees and a Bush 43 appointee determined, quote, after careful review, that an administrative stay temporarily pausing Murphy's order is appropriate. The judges further indicated their intent to promptly issue a complete ruling on revoking the lower court's blockade. So it's not just a temporary stay. They are planning to actually revoke that order made by that Judge Murphy. My ear is itching. They get to sweating up under these headphones, and that makes me itch. I have to get a wash rag and take them to my ears when I get done with this. The appellate court's decision authorizes the Trump administration to move forward with its deportation policy as litigation on the matter continues. Wednesday's ruling comes as another humiliating moment for Murphy, who has a history of openly defying the U.S. Supreme Court on the matter. And numerous judges have actually attempted to defy the Supreme Court. Let's see. I lost my place. The page glitched. The nation's highest court temporarily stayed 6-3 a preliminary injunction issued by Murphy last year on the administration's, quote, third country deportations. Not to be outdone, the Biden appointee issued a directive to the federal government hours later in which he claimed that his initial block on the policy was not affected by the Supreme Court's ruling, which is incorrect. All courts lower than the Supreme Court, which is every court in the land, are affected by rulings from the Supreme Court. The Trump administration subsequently asked the Supreme Court to clarify its order, this time in a 7-2 decision. The High Court affirmed that its ruling did, in fact, cover Murphy's initial injunction. Of course it did. The incident prompted stinging criticism from Associate Justice Elena Kagan. In a statement concurring with the High Court's clarification, the Obama appointee noted that while she disagreed with the Supreme Court's initial decision to block Murphy's injunction, she does, quote, not see how a district court can compel compliance with an order that this court has stayed. And that's a fact. You can't go against, if you're a lower court, you can't go against the highest court in the land. The legal battle over the Trump administration's deportation policies is one of many playing out in federal courtrooms across America as left-wing activists wage a full-throated judicial coup against the sitting president. They're trying to usurp the power of the president of the United States. And that ain't cool. Filing lawsuits in district courts dominated by Democrat appointed judges, these leftists have sought to weaponize the legal system to grind the administration's policy agenda to a halt. And in many cases, these rogue judges have played along with such a strategy. Just last week, a 3-judge panel on the D.C. Circuit of Appeals shot down a request by the government to freeze a lower court blockade on its revocation of temporary protected status for hundreds of thousands of Haitian nationals residing in the United States. The Department of Justice appealed the decision to the Supreme Court on Wednesday. So the battle goes on. But we have a win here with this this First Circuit Court having halted Brian Murphy's order, stopped it in its tracks, and will go back and actually put the kibosh on it, as it were. And with that, that was my last article for tonight. Oh, we have been going for 3 hours almost. So, hey, y'all do me a favor. Go down below and hit that thumbs up. It's a thumbs up on both platforms. And if you're not already following or subscribed to the channel on your respective platforms, please go ahead and do so. Hit that follow button on Rumble, the subscribe button on YouTube, and smash that notification bell like it owes you money and refuses to pay. It's the same on both platforms, so y'all just do it. And I want to say God bless you to every one of you watching this show tonight. And God bless America. Lord knows this country needs the blessings. And with that, thank you for coming and watching Big Tony Speaks. I have been Big Tony, your host. And I'll see you all next time. And remember, Big Tony will speak on it. Y'all have a great night. God bless you. I'll see you next time.